They say funerals bring closure, and weddings bring new beginnings, but I never expected one to lead me right back to the other. The day started like any other Saturday. A friend from work, Tanya, had begged me to come to her cousin's wedding. I didn't know the couple, but I agreed, more out of politeness than excitement. I wore a navy dress, heels that pinched my toes, and a fake smile I perfected since my world fell apart 2 years ago. The ceremony was elegant, the kind of expensive simplicity only wealth could afford. Glass chandeliers, floor walls, champagne before noon. As the bride walked down the aisle, people turned, phones rose, and the string quartet softened into a haunting version of Can't Help Falling in Love. I looked toward the groom, expecting to see a stranger, but I didn't. I saw my husband. I saw Aaron, and my body froze. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I didn't run. I simply stopped breathing. My hands trembled, and my throat closed like a trap. My brain whispered, no, screamed, that couldn't be. But it was. Same eyes, same nervous smirk. The way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other like he always did when anxious. My late husband, the man I buried 2 years ago after a fiery car crash left nothing but a closed casket, was standing alive and well, holding another woman's hand and vowing forever. I sank into the nearest chair at the back, hoping no one noticed the color drain from my face. My heart thumped so hard I thought it would give me away. I watched the rest of the ceremony through a veil of disbelief. Every vow a dagger, to have and to hold. He used to say that to me, whisper it while tracing the curve of my spine, in sickness and in health. He held my hand through chemotherapy, or so I thought, till death do us part. But apparently, death wasn't a line he honored. It was a stage cue. As the newlyweds kissed, applause erupted. I couldn't clap. I couldn't move. My legs were rooted to the ground like they knew if I stood, the truth might shatter around me. Aaron, or whatever his name was now, hadn't noticed me. Maybe the curls I wore differently or the weight I lost from grief masked me just enough. I didn't want to draw attention. I didn't want to become a scene at someone else's wedding. I just needed air. I slipped out quietly during the reception, past the clinking glasses and camera flashes, past the bride laughing in the arms of the man I used to sleep beside. I stood outside the venue, hands clutching my chest, wondering if I'd finally lost it. Was I hallucinating? Seeing ghosts? But no, he was real. He was there, and he looked happy. The sky was a perfect blue, cruelly beautiful for such an ugly revelation. I sat in my car, engine off, silence crushing me. I stared at the venue's ornate doors and remembered the last time I'd seen Aaron's face. It was in a framed photo next to his urn. Everyone said he died instantly, burned beyond recognition. They said I shouldn't see the body, that it was better I remembered him as he was. They said I needed closure, so I let them close the casket. I let them convince me, and I cried myself hollow for months. I mourned a man who hadn't even had the decency to truly die. That's the thing about grief. It demands honesty, but lies don't burn. They just hide. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. Not yet. Who would believe me? I needed proof. I needed to know if my mind had snapped or if my life had been alive from the very beginning. I started the car and drove away, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. One thought looped like a broken prayer. You don't forget the face of the man you buried. After that wedding, nothing felt real anymore. Not the ticking of clocks, not the taste of coffee, not the buzz of my phone with messages I couldn't answer. I spent the next day in a daze, staring at the walls of my apartment like they might blink back. But I kept circling back to one truth. If that was Aaron at the altar, then whose ashes had I scattered across Lake Monroe? Whose death had I wept over in that suffocating church? Whose casket had I stood over, clutching a single white rose while the pastor spoke empty words over a man who never truly left? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a bottle of wine and a folder, the one I hadn't opened in months, the one marked Aaron's accident. It held all the official lies. The police report said a car crash, that his vehicle had veered off the road, struck a barrier, ignited into flames. No survivors. The autopsy was vague. The body was badly burned, it said. Unrecognizable. Dental record were inconclusive, the report claimed, but matched closely enough. I remembered how the officer patted my shoulder and said, "Sometimes it's better you don't see them like that." I believed him. Grief makes fools of us all. I found the death certificate buried beneath the sympathy cards and medical bills. There was in bold type, Aaron James Miller. Date of death, cause, vehicular accident with total thermal injuries. Signed off by Dr. C. Rowland. I didn't know any Dr. Rowland. He wasn't our family doctor, not even someone from the hospital where Aaron used to volunteer. Something about the whole thing felt off, but at the time I was drowning. I didn't question it. Now I was wide awake. I ran the name through public databases. No medical license registered under that name in the state. No online profile. No trace. My husband's death had been signed off by a ghost. And suddenly, I knew I'd been buried alongside a lie. I needed more. Proof, answers, and maybe revenge. But first, I needed to know who was buried in that grave. The funeral home hadn't heard from me since the burial. I called pretending to be doing a memorial project and asked for information on the body's identification. The clerk paused, asked for a case number, then returned with a clipped tone. There was no DNA confirmation requested by the family. Identification was made through personal effects and vehicle registration. That's it. No one tested the body. No one thought to. They just saw his car, his license, his wedding ring, burn onto a corpse, and told me it was him. I gave a eulogy over a stranger's remains while the real Aaron vanished into wind like smoke from a fire he'd started himself. My hands shook as I hung up the phone. My husband hadn't died. He had disappeared, but not without help. You don't fake your death without someone pulling strings. And now, I started to wonder if I'd ever really known the man I married. Memories twisted like vines in my mind. Our wedding day, his whispered secrets, the times he stayed out late with vague explanations, the time he transferred all our savings to a joint account for emergencies and then closed it a week before the crash. I thought he was preparing for the worst. I didn't realize he was preparing for escape. That night, I pulled out the only box of things I kept. Their scent long faded, their meaning now poison. At the bottom, I found a storage key. I'd never noticed it before. It had a number etched into it, 14A. The next morning, I found a corresponding facility just outside the city. I told the manager I was accessing my late husband's unit. I brought the death certificate. That was all they needed. The door creaked open like a tomb. Inside was dust, forgotten furniture, and a single locked briefcase. I pried it open. Inside were photos of us, love letters, mementos, but also documents I'd never seen, multiple IDs, passports, credit card with names I didn't recognize, but photos I couldn't deny. Aaron's face stared back at me again, and again under different names. Daniel, Cole, Marcus. He hadn't just faked his death. He had faked his entire life. That night I sat in silence, the suitcase of secrets on the floor like a corpse, and I thought of all the times I'd looked into his eyes and believed I saw truth. I had been married to a man who didn't exist, a ghost in human skin, a mirage with a heartbeat. But the cruelest twist wasn't that he fooled me. It was that he didn't even think I deserved the truth. He left me to bury a lie, cry over a stranger, and rebuild a life from the ashes of his vanishing act. And now, he was living a new lie, wearing a ring I once gave him, promising forever to a woman who didn't know she was walking into a nightmare. I had choices now. I could pretend I never saw him. I could let this new woman suffer the same fate. Or I could become the truth that haunted him. Because some ghosts don't rest. Some ghosts return. And I was done mourning a man who was never worthy of a grave. The morning after I found the briefcase full of false identities, I stared at my own reflection like it was a stranger, like the woman looking back at me was someone naive, someone gullible, someone who would let a phantom build a life inside her heart and walk out without consequence. The air in my apartment was thick with betrayal, with the musty scent of secrets that had aged like rot beneath the floorboards of my past. I kept asking myself the same question. How many other lives had he borrowed? How many other women had he charmed, married, destroyed, then disappeared from? And more than anything, who exactly was the man I once promised to love forever? I stopped calling him Aaron. That name belonged to a fantasy. I was now chasing a man without a real name. And I wasn't just chasing him for answers. I was chasing him for justice. I started with the bride. Her name was Hannah Prescott. A quick search told me more than she ever meant to share with the world. Wealthy family, the kind who appeared in luxury magazines and donated art to galleries. Her social media was glossy, curated, and heartbreakingly naive. Her bio read, "Engaged to my soulmate ring, can't wait for forever." The man she tagged in every photo, the one with his arm wrapped tightly around her waist, was my dead husband. Same eyes, same smile, only the name was different. Now he went by James Whitman. It was almost laughable. Aaron James Miller to James Whitman. Just enough change to pass unnoticed. Just enough sameness to keep the lie alive. And Hannah? She looked so much like me when I was younger. Before grief hollowed me out. Before betrayal aged my eyes. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through her photos. There were engagement pictures on a beach I'd once walked with him. Captions like, "He makes me believe in love again." I wanted to scream, but instead, I saved every post. I started compiling a dossier, a digital graveyard of deception. Then I did something reckless. I made a new account, fake name, no face, and sent her a message, "You don't know who you married." She didn't respond. Probably thought it was spam. She had no reason to trust a shadow in her inbox. So I did what I should have done months ago. I hired a private investigator. His name was Malik Carter. Ex-cop, worked in fraud recovery now. He didn't blink when I told him the story. Just leaned back in his creaky office chair and said, "You'd be surprised how often this happens. But most people never get this far." I handed him the suitcase, the IDs, the wedding photos, everything. He sifted through it like a surgeon. Clinical, detached. But I saw the moment his eyebrows twitched. The moment he realized just how deep this went. "This guy didn't just fake a death," Malik said. "He's been faking lives." Over the next few days, Malik traced one of the aliases, Daniel Whitman, to a P.O. box in another state. He found marriage records under Cole Evans in Nevada, dating back 5 years. Another name, Marcus Bell, showed up in an old lawsuit with a plaintiff, a middle-aged widow. Claimed her fiancé had disappeared with nearly $80,000 of her savings after a staged boating accident. The case was dismissed. No evidence, no suspect, no closure. But the pattern was clear. He married them, loved them, earned their trust, then vanished. Every time, with money, with memories, with pieces of their souls. And me, I had been part of the same play. Just one act in a performance he had perfected. The cruelest irony was that I'd spent years thinking he was the one who died. But now, I realized a version of me who believed in him, that was the one buried. I started digging into our own marriage with fresh eyes. I pulled old financial records, saw the transfers, the red flags, the subtle disappearances of assets in the weeks before his death. Even the life insurance. He'd upped the policy 6 months before the crash, then canceled a week prior, claiming he'd found a better provider. I thought it was smart. I didn't realize it was strategy. There's something indescribable about learning you were never loved. Not really. That every kiss was currency. Every "I love you" a transaction. Every plan for the future just a countdown to your ruin. And now, someone else was living in that lie, walking toward the same trap I once mistook for home. But this time, he made one mistake. He let me see him. He let a ghost from his past watch him say, "I do," to another victim. And I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted exposure. Because no one should grieve a man who never existed. And no woman should build a future with a corpse wearing someone else's smile. I called Malik and told him the next step. We needed more than proof. We needed leverage. Because if Aaron or James or Daniel or Marcus was going to play husband again, I wanted to be the uninvited guest who blew the roof off his wedding house of cards. I wanted the truth to become his ruin. and I was done hiding in the shadows. This time, the ghost would speak. There's a certain power in knowing the truth when everyone else is still living a lie. It's like holding a lit match in a room full of gasoline, and suddenly, you control the fire. After days of following the breadcrumb trail Malik uncovered, I finally knew who I was really dealing with. His real name, as far as anyone could confirm, was Caleb Jonathan West, born in New Mexico, disappeared at 18, and reappeared under at least 6 different aliases across the country over the past 10 years. His fingerprints didn't exist in any federal database because the man was never arrested, never documented, never caught. He moved like a shadow, loved like a parasite, and disappeared like a puff of smoke the moment the lie grew stale. But the thing about living so many lives is that eventually you slip, you get comfortable, you think you're untouchable. And that's exactly what happened when Caleb decided to remarry under the name James Whitman. Because this time I was watching. This time the grave didn't stay shut. I had Malik track every detail of their honeymoon plans. Hannah and James were headed to Santorini, first-class flights, 5-star resort, the kind of dream I once thought I was living. I didn't tell Malik what I was planning, not entirely. I just said I needed one final favor, an introduction to someone who could help me crash a honeymoon without getting arrested. Malik sighed, muttered something about revenge being a dangerous game, but gave me a contact, a woman named Olivia. Former fraud victim, now legal consultant with teeth sharper than most attorneys I'd met. I met her in a coffee shop downtown. She listened to my story without blinking. When I was done, she leaned in and said, "You're not crazy. You're just the first one who got close enough to finish the job." We drew up a file. Names, evidence, the fake identities, the past victims, the storage key, the phony death, the forged documents. It was a portfolio of rot, and it all pointed to the same man with different faces. Olivia helped me prepare a packet, and we sent it to Hannah, anonymously. It contained photos of me and Caleb, our wedding, our vacations, our life together. It had photocopies of his other marriages, legal documents, name changes, and his death certificate, the one he faked. We included a burner number. No threats, just one line. Asked him about the fire, and then we waited. The silence was unbearable. Days passed. No word, no reply. I started to think maybe Hannah ignored it. Or worse, maybe she showed him. Maybe he convinced her it was all lies. He was good at that, manipulating truth until it bent into fantasy. But then on a Tuesday night, at 2:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. One text from an unknown number. "I need to meet you, alone." And then an address. I knew it had to be her. I didn't sleep. I showed up the next morning at a public park on the edge of town, heart pounding like a war drum. She was already there. Hannah, standing beneath a tree, arms crossed, face pale. She looked like someone who just watched the walls of her life cave in. As I walked toward her, I saw the photo in her hand. Our wedding, mine and Caleb's. She didn't speak right away, just stared at me with the kind of silence that screams. And then, her voice, shaky but controlled. "How long did you think he was dead?" I told her everything, the accident, the grief, the lies, the wedding I stumbled into. Her face broke slowly, like glass cracking from the inside out. She showed me the packet. She said she confronted him last night. He denied it all until she pulled out the wedding photo. That's when he snapped. She said his entire face changed. Cold, empty, like a mask peeled back to show the void underneath. And then he vanished, packed a single bag, walked out the hotel room door, and left her with nothing but a fake passport and silence. She hadn't seen him since. I stared at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel hatred. I felt sorrow, not for him, for us, for the women left in the wake of a man who built love out of lies and made graves out of promises. Hannah asked if I thought he'd try it again. I said no. I knew he would, because monsters like Caleb don't stop, they just relocate, reinvent, reinfect. She asked me what we'd do next. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "We bring him down, together." We went straight to the authorities, this time with a story they couldn't ignore. Olivia filed a report, and with enough documented evidence, we finally cracked something open. It turns out Caleb had warrants, old ones buried in state databases under one of his earlier identities, from a fraud case tied to a life insurance scam. Once the feds connected the dots, they opened a full investigation, but Caleb was already gone, like he always was. Slipped into the wind, into another name, another lie, but not before we did something different this time. We told the story. We went public with everything. Olivia knew a journalist who specialized in con men, fraud, and hidden lives. They published a full expose. The Man with No Name, how one woman discovered her dead husband had dozens of lives. It went viral. Victims came out of the shadows. A woman from Arizona, another from Texas, a brother who said he hadn't seen Caleb since he disappeared in 2009. The truth exploded like wildfire, and suddenly, Caleb had nowhere to run. His face was everywhere. His lies no longer safe, because when you live by deception, your only currency is secrecy, and we burned it to the ground. The last I heard, there was a confirmed sighting of him crossing the border into Canada. A warrant's out. His real name is now linked to all 6 aliases. There's a price on his freedom, and whether the law finds him or karma does, I no longer care, because the silence is over. The truth is loud now, and sometimes that's the only justice survivors ever get. I used to think closure meant justice. A handcuff, a courtroom, a sentence. But now I know better. Sometimes closure is a choice. It's the moment you decide the past no longer owns you, even if the person who ruined it never faces the consequences. Caleb or Aaron or James or whatever name he's hiding behind now, he's still out there, but he's not invisible anymore. His mask is shattered. His story is no longer his to control. Because I told it. Because we told it. Because I stopped being the grieving widow and became the last person he never wanted to remember. And that's power. In the weeks that followed the article, more victims came forward. Women who had buried him. Women who had married him. Women who were never even given the dignity of a goodbye. They spoke in hushed tones, embarrassed by the lies they fell for. But every voice that joined the chorus made the silence feel a little less suffocating. The shame wasn't ours to carry. It never was. We were victims, not of love, but of a predator dressed in promises. The journalist called it the most elaborate web of emotional and financial fraud ever orchestrated by a single man. But to me, it was more than headlines. It was my life, my memories, my grief, weaponized. I lived beside a man for 5 years who never once showed me who he truly was. And when he disappeared, I mourned a ghost, built a shrine to a fantasy. But now I've torn it down, piece by piece, photo by photo, lie by lie, and all that's left is me. I walk differently now, slower, heavier, but not from weakness, from awareness, from wisdom earned in the hardest way imaginable. And sometimes I still pass couples on the street and wonder, how many of us are sleeping beside someone we don't truly know? How many secrets are buried in plain sight, and how long before they rise? But here's the truth I hold on to, the one thing that kept me standing through every gut punch revelation, every broken piece of trust, every silent scream in the middle of the night. I survived. I didn't just survive him, I survived me. The version of me who loved blindly, trusted deeply, fell fast, and refused to believe that monsters sometimes wear wedding bands. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's this. Closure is not about punishing the person who broke you. It's about freeing the part of you that believed you deserved it. So if you're watching this and something in your life feels off, if your gut is whispering something your heart refuses to hear, listen, ask the questions, look for the cracks. And if someone you love turns out to be someone you never knew, walk away. You don't owe anyone your silence. You owe yourself the truth, because secrets rot in the dark, and the only way to kill them is to bring them into the light. This was the story of how I accidentally attended my late husband's wedding and ended up burying the lies he tried to live forever. Thank you for watching. If you found this story shocking, heartbreaking, or if you've ever known someone living a double life, drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I read every one. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more haunting real-life stories like this one. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous people aren't strangers in the night. They're the ones who promise to love you in daylight.